Welcome back, everyone. It's Eric from Rare Candy here. Today we are kicking off our very first Sword and Shield deck profile with the new Zacian V. This is definitely a card you guys knew we had to cover on the channel. Sword and Shield I think is a really cool set, and I think most of the strengths from its set come from the trainers that it has, but in terms of different new attackers, Zacian V is definitely one of the strongest cards that we're getting in this set. And I think a really impactful one. So this is going to be an Arceus Dialga Palkia variant of the deck, and actually has a very unique draw engine, which you'll see I was heavily inspired by. I think it was a Japanese list I found on Twitter, like the first weekend these cards came out in Japan. So lots of interesting things going on in this particular variant, but definitely excited to show off this deck. And this is actually the same list that was featured in our recent testing rounds video as well. So if you guys want to see how this looks in action, I will have a link down below in the description and on screen as well if you guys want to check out that link and watch some games with it as well. So let's get into it. Zacian V is, of course, the main attacker of this deck. We're playing 4 copies. New card from Sword and Shield. It is one of the new Pokemon V, if you guys aren't too familiar with the mechanic. It's just like the old Pokemon EX, or kind of like the Pokemon GX minus the GX attack, but it's just a 2-prize Pokemon. That's it. This guy is a basic, 220 HP, fire weakness, grass resistance, and a 2 retreat cost. And it has an ability, Intrepid Sword. You get to look at the top 3 cards of your deck, attach any metal energies you find there to this Pokemon, and put the other cards there in your hand. Then your turn ends. So best case scenario here, you get to get some energy acceleration, and worst case scenario, it's just a draw 3, end your turn, which is a really strong ability, especially now with the Sword and Shield era looking to limit your supporter on turn 1. A lot of times you're not going to have aggressive turn 1s, and you can't attack on turn 1 either. So especially going first, I really love this ability because it gives you still a decent way at getting a pretty strong playoff on your first turn, despite being limited by all these other rules. So really love this ability. Big fan of this. The attack also solid as well. 3 metal energy is 230, and this Pokemon can't attack during your next turn. So 230 is actually a pretty decent number to hit for. You're going to one-shot any of the non-tag team GXs that are running around, and of course the other Pokemon V that have been printed so far. Now you are going to wind up being a little short against tag team Pokemon GX, and also against the new VMAX Pokemon. And while you're still going to have to two-shot Pokemon VMAX no matter what, which is fine I think, we actually run a bunch of different ways to modify our damage output, partly because of ADP as well. To one-shot tag teams. So 230, it's fine, but as you'll see in this list, we're actually going to be able to scale this damage output up even higher to take some one-shots with Zacian V here. So this is what the whole deck is going to be based around. It's going to be our primary attacker. But going on, we have 3 copies of Arceus Dialga Palkia GX. So this is the other key component of our Pokemon here. We're mainly playing it for Altered Creation GX, though Ultimate Ray is still a good attack as well. So Altered Creation GX, of course, for a metal energy, your attacks do 30 more damage for the rest of the game. And if you have a water energy attached, you also get an additional prize whenever you knock out something. So this is the big thing that's made this card so good throughout the Cosmic Eclipse format, and that's still going to be the case with Zacian V. So it's going to bump us up to 260, so we're inching closer to being able to one-shot things like Mewtwo, Mew GX, Reshiram, Charizard, etc. So we're at 260 right now, which is definitely good, and getting additional prizes is fine. We can just catch her 2 Dedennes and win if we want to as well. So yeah, Altered Creation, fantastic move. I really don't need to say too much more about it. Its other attack, Ultimate Ray, is still solid. So for a Water Metal Colorist is 150, and you search your deck for 3 basic energies, attach them to your Pokemon any way that you like. So unlike the previous incarnations of this deck with Keldeo GX that we saw a lot during the Cosmic Eclipse format, I actually don't think Ultimate Ray is even quite as necessary as it was previously, just because Zacian V has a fantastic ability, and of course we have to do Metal Saucer as well to get energies into play. So Ultimate Ray, I'm glad we still have it as an option, but we actually don't even need it all the time as well, which is really cool. But still a great attack that we should point out here. And then up next from there, just one other Pokemon. We have 1 copy of Galarian Zigzagoon. Now this is a Pokemon that's going to help us hit better numbers. It has this ability, much like the old Crobat G from back in the day. Once during your turn, whenever you bench it from hand, you get to put 1 damage counter on one of your opponent's Pokemon. Seems pretty benign, I guess. Like, it doesn't seem super impactful, but 1 damage counter does make all the difference. Crobat G saw a ton of play. We even included it in our top 10 psychic Pokemon cards of all time video, so if you guys want to see that as well, I'll have a link to that on screen. But In the context for this deck here, we need to hit 270, as I mentioned. So Galarian Zigzagoon is one way we can hit that, because right now we're at 260 with ADP. But actually, this is really in the deck meant to help us hit 280, because we do have some other damage modifiers. And 280 is important because ADP is 280. And if we go against mirror matches, this is going to be a card that can help us one-shot an opposing ADP. But even outside of that matchup, like I said, it's just another way we can hit 270 if we need to as well. So up next from there, we have some supporters in the deck. As you can see, we have no Jirachi or Dedenes or anything like that. And that's because of this interesting engine that we're going to be playing. So we're playing 4 copies of Clay. This is a card we really don't see much of. It really hasn't had much of an impact since it's come out. But you discard the top 7 cards of your deck, and then you put all item cards you find there into your hand. So very interesting form of draw power that we have here. And so basically, you know, think of the new Metal Saucer card that's going to get us metal energies out of the discard. We really don't mind discarding energies with Clay because we can get them out that way. Also, this is one reason we have kind of inflated counts of some of our Pokemon here, like ADP and Zacian. Really, you only need 2 ADP in a deck. You really, I think, only need 3 Zacian in a deck, but just because there is some collateral damage in terms of your discards, that is why we are also playing the thicker Pokemon line than you would otherwise, I think, want of these cards. But yeah, so this is going to allow us to amass a pretty huge hand size. We are very item reliant with this deck, and so Clay is a very interesting form of draw power. Got this idea from a very early Japanese list I saw. I thought it looked really cool, wanted to try it out, and it's actually been surprisingly good, because if we discard supporters with Clay, we can get them back with Cynthia and Caitlin or Palpad, which we run both of in this deck. We finally have decent Pokemon recovery and energy recovery thanks to the new fishing rod. So if we mill away energy or Pokemon, we can get them back with our items. And so yeah, Clay, it's actually proven to be a pretty decent draw engine so far. So up next from there, though, we have 3 copies of Cynthia and Caitlin. This is going to be an alternate way we can draw cards. So we get to put a supporter from discard back into our hand, and if we discard 1 card, we can draw 3. So sometimes we can pitch away a Metal Energy and draw 3, get the Metal Energy out of discard with Metal Saucer. Also, of course, if we're discarding our supporters with Clay, Cynthia and Caitlin gives us a way to get this back at some point as well. And it's a way we can get a supporter in hand to draw cards with off of Tag Call. So just pretty much makes sense in a deck like this. But from there, we are also playing 1 copy of Mallow and Lana as well. For a similar reason, we can search it off of Tag Call. And, you know, early on, we're going to want to find a way to get ADP into the active if we don't start with it. So it's a way we can do that. And also, if we fulfill the secondary effect where we discard 2 cards from hand, we can heal 120. Just giving us a little bit more tanking potential, and also is a pretty good effect against some of the 1-prize decks out there like Malamar. So that's actually our entire supporter line, guys. This deck is insanely item reliant, as we will get into shortly. So I think up until this point, this engine looks incredibly weird, but bear with me here. So up next from there, we have 4 copies of Acrobike. Acrobike is another way we can keep digging with this deck, since we don't have a Dedenne GX or Jirachi engine or anything like that. This is actually a way we can keep digging on a turn, because a lot of times with Jirachi-based decks, you know, you play your Cynthia for turn as an example. You don't hit what you need, so you look at some more cards with Stellar Wish, or you play Dedenne. And so Acrobike serves a similar function here. We get to look at the top 7 with Clay. Maybe we whiff that one crucial key piece that we need, but we hit an Acrobike. We can keep digging a little bit deeper and hopefully hit what we need there. So Acrobike, it's fine. Look at the top 2 cards of your deck. Keep one, discard the other. Sometimes you can even discard Metal Energies, which is nice. So Acrobike, I think, actually has some pretty good synergy with this deck. And speaking of discarding Metal Energies, up next we have a pretty massively important card that we're getting in Sword and Shield, and that is going to be Metal Saucer. So Metal Saucer, very similar to the old Dark Patch and Aqua Patch. Dark Patch in particular really helped define the entire format that it was released into for a long time. And for good reason. Metal Saucer is the same thing, but for Metal Pokemon. We get to attach a Metal Energy from discard to one of our benched Metal Pokemon. So of course, we can help power up Zacian V's a little bit easier in the mid game after one of them goes down. This can help us formulate a quick response, or even help us just set up a quick Zacian V just to start putting on pressure immediately with the deck. Metal Saucer also enables a turn 1 Altered Creation GX, which we'll get into a little bit later in this deck profile as well. So absolutely one of the best new cards that we're getting from Sword and Shield in conjunction with Zacian V. So Up next from there, though, we're going to have 4 copies of Custom Catcher. So Custom Catcher is a card that has declined, I think, in play a little bit ever since Cosmic Eclipse, just because we got Great Catcher. But Custom Catcher, I think, actually gets a good bit better after Sword and Shield. Now that we have Pokemon V into the mix, Great Catcher isn't going to work quite as reliably. Also, Pokemon Catcher, which we are getting a reprint of, is still a coin flip. So if you are a deck that can abuse Custom Catcher effectively, it's definitely the way to go, especially with this Clay engine. Unlike something like the new Professor's Magnolia that's coming out in Sword and Shield, we're not discarding our hand to draw 7. We're just adding on top of our hand. We're just constantly amassing a bigger and bigger hand size, making it easier to actually get 2 custom catchers at the same time than I think most decks would be able to do. So of course, just a recap on custom catcher. The first effect says just draw until you have 3 cards if you play one of these from hand. You know, not too great, but it does make you a little bit stamp proof in the late game, I suppose. But, you know, of course, the real reason we're playing this is the secondary effect. If you play 2 from hand at the same time, you switch your opponent's active with one of their bench Pokemon. So, of course, this is a very strong effect, but it's just difficult for most decks to be able to get 2 of these at the same time. But thanks to Clay, I actually think it's really not a big issue, and I've been really pleasantly surprised by how easy it is to actually get the double custom catcher combo off thanks to this engine. However, from there, we're still actually playing 1 copy of Great Catcher as well. I think Great Catcher is still a really solid card. You discard 2 cards from hand and switch your opponent's active with one of their bench GXs or EXs. So, of course, this is just going to be a much more flexible way of bringing up something, you know, maybe bringing up that Dedenne that's hiding on your opponent's bench that take your last knockout to win the game, or maybe something you damaged with Ultimate Ray and you need to bring it back up to be able to finish it off and take your last knockout. And, of course, the discard effect actually has synergy here because we can pitch away metal energies if we need to as well. So going on from there, we have 3 copies of Quick Ball. This is one of my favorite cards that we're getting in Sword and Shield. I actually did a whole video just on how impactful this card is alone not too long ago for a pretty good reason. It's really the basic searching card we've really been lacking for a while now. So you discard a card from your hand, search your deck for a basic Pokemon, put it into your hand. So of course, as I've kind of reiterated multiple times, it's another way we can pitch away metal energy, but also it searches out everything in our deck, and it's really cool that the card goes to hand as opposed to something like Nest Ball of the past, which goes to bench, because this will allow us to search for a Galarian Zigzagoon and make use of its ability, because we do have to bench it from hand, not from deck. So, of course, we can just find everything in our deck this way. But having said that, we are still going to be playing 2 copies of Tag Call as well. Tag Call, even though we have Quick Ball in the mix, is still a really solid card because, of course, it can help us grab Arceus, Palkia. But also, it's a way we can find a supporter because we don't play Dedennes, so we can't grab a way to draw cards off of Quick Ball. We don't play Jirachis. So Tag Call is still going to give us some flexibility to draw cards with Cynthia and Caitlin. And also, these are going to be our 4th and 5th searching outs to an Arceus, Palkia GX, since it is so important that we find this on the first turn of the game and start getting it set up to use Altered Creation. Next up, guys, from there we have another new card that is going to be Fine Band. This is going to be the primary way we are going to be attempting to modify our damage output. So I think at a glance, this card looks pretty underwhelming. It's a Pokemon tool card that just gives you a +10. So while that's much worse than something like Choice Band of the past or even Muscle Band from even longer ago, 10 damage is not to be underestimated just because it does change the math and changes 2-hit knockouts to 1-hit knockouts. So with Arceus, Palkia, we're going to get up to 260 with Zacian V, and with Fine Band, we can actually get up to 270, which is now allowing us to knock out tag teams. And of course, from there, like I mentioned earlier too, we have the Zigzagoon if we do need an additional counter from there. But this is going to be the main way we can hit 270, knocking out so many of these very dominant and powerful Pokemon that are in the format. And of course, we can find all this stuff off of Clay as well, making it pretty easy to find whenever we do need it. So up next from there, we have 3 copies of Energy Spinner. This is a card that might look really weird in this count, but hear me out. So it allows you to search your deck for a basic energy, but if it's your first turn going second in the game, you can search your deck for 3 basic energies instead. So we are a predominantly metal energy based deck, but we do still need a way to find those water energies to get our Arceus, Palkia GX up and running. So we're playing the 3 count just to make sure that we can find them off of Clay whenever we need them. And I think at the very minimum you should play 2. I definitely would not go below 2 in this deck whatsoever, but 3 has been kind of the most consistent number I've had right now with the deck. I basically find these whenever I need them, and even after the first and second turns when you've already used your Altered Creation, it's still decent in the mid and late game just to help find those metal energies whenever you might need them, because Clay Unfortunately, it does discard energies. You're only keeping items, so you need to run ways to actually get energies out of deck with Clay, and Energy Spinner is going to allow us to do that. So up next, we have 3 copies of Energy Switch as well. Energy Switch in particular, really cool because we can now get a turn 1 Altered Creation GX off with this deck, which I think is something Arceus, Dialga, Palkia decks have kind of struggled with. I think very early on during the Cosmic Eclipse format, people were jumping through hoops to try to figure out a way to get this attack going first turn. But luckily with this deck, you're just a couple energy switches away from consistently being able to do it because you already run Metal Saucer no matter what, just because of how strong of a card it is. And thanks to Metal Saucer, you actually can get this attack going because ideally, if you're going to be starting the game, especially if it's your first turn going second, you can get your Arceus, Dialga, Palkia GX into play in the active spot, attach a water energy for turn, find a way to get a metal energy in the discard, which, as I've outlined, really isn't too hard thanks to all of these discarding options. You Metal Saucer your metal energy to your Zacian, and then energy switch that energy to the Arceus, Dialga, Palkia, and now you have a turn 1 Altered Creation GX. So even though that sounds like a lot, it's really not as hard as it sounds, especially if you just have a Clay on turn 1 and start with an ADP. The deck kind of falls into place from there and allows you a pretty decent way of getting the turn 1 Altered Creation. But even if you whiff, luckily we have a really strong ability to fall back on to end your turn with Intrepid Sword on Zacian V as well. So Energy Switch, really good for that play, and also since we don't play Jirachi or like that nice free retreating pivot Pokemon in between knockouts, sometimes we do have to do like Metal Saucer, Energy Switch shenanigans to get a new attacker powered up out of nowhere whenever our only powered up Pokemon goes down. So Energy Switch definitely has found a good home in the deck so far, I think. And up next from there, we have 3 copies of Switch. So Switch, of course, just going to allow us some flexibility in terms of moving our active around. Like I said, we don't have that nice free retreater with Jirachi and a skateboard combo. So Switch is going to be one of the main ways we kind of maneuver our board around. It's very important that we're always getting metal energy onto a benched Pokemon. So a lot of times we need to keep something on the bench, get all of its energy on there, then switch into that. Up next from there, we have 2 copies of Reset Stamp. So Reset Stamp, just to give us a little bit of disruption in the late game. So of course your opponent shuffles their hand into their deck and draws equal to the amount of prize cards they have remaining. So ideally, we're going to sacrifice an ADP, to get set up. We're going to use Altered Creation. Maybe if we're lucky, we can get off an Ultimate Ray as well. But ideally, after they knock this thing out, we're just going to reset Stamp twice, and every turn we're going to ideally take a knockout after this ADP goes down anyways. So they're going to knock us out, Stamp knockout. If they do bounce back from it and knock out a Zacian, Stamp knockout again and win the game. Or even if we don't win just in that exact order, just 2 stamps basically helps ensure that your opponent never goes above a 3-card hand after they knock out this ADP. Up next from there, we have some recovery options. We have 1 copy of Palpad. So Palpad is just going to allow us to get some supporters back from discard into our deck. As I mentioned, we do only keep our item cards with Clay, and frequently we do have some supporters that are sometimes casualties of this discarding effect. And this gives us a way to get those back into our deck if we need them. And then from there, we have 1 copy of Fishing Rod, another new card from Sword and Shield. We get to shuffle in up to 2 basic energies and up to 2 Pokemon from discard into our deck. So like I mentioned, sometimes we might lose some attackers along the way with Clay. Fishing Rod can get those back. And also if we discard too many energies with Clay, or too many of our energies go down via just getting greedy with discards or our Pokemon being knocked out, we can get some back with Fishing Rod as well, and maybe increase the odds of like a mid-game Intrepid Sword working as well. So that's going to be it for the trainer cards. A lot of items here, but like I said, Clay is going to allow us to get all of these with the deck, and that's how we are going to be getting set up. So getting into our energies though, we have 8 copies in total of Metal Energy in the deck. Seems like kind of a lower count, but you have to remember we can keep reusing all of these with Metal Saucer. So effectively, we're going to have 12 outs to Metal Energy throughout the course of a game. And then from there, we have 3 copies of Water Energy as well. We only really need to get off Altered Creation, and then we really don't need these anymore. Kind of a shame that Zacian V has a 3 metal attack cost instead of like a 2 metal colorless. That would have been a little bit better. But nevertheless, the 3 Water Energy, it fills its role. After your ADP gets its use, you really don't need these anymore, so that's why we're playing the pretty low count of them in this deck. So yeah guys, that's going to be our first attempt here at a Zacian V ADP deck. I know there are actually a bunch of different ways you can build this, but I thought this build looked really interesting. I really wanted to try it out, show it off on the channel, and see what you guys think. And of course, as I mentioned too, if you guys didn't see the games that we uploaded with this deck, I will have a link down below in the description if you want to see how Zacian V is going to look in action. But I hope you guys did enjoy this content today. If you did, of course, feel free to like and subscribe. And if you can, consider supporting this channel through a couple different ways. You can go to our online store, rarecandytcg.com, to pick up some merch. Or if you want, you can become a patron at patreon.com/rarecandytcg, where some of our patrons actually had early access to this list a week before it even went up on our channel. So we have all sorts of cool content over there as well. But as always, thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.